everybody. Jeff Jones here. Welcome to the weekly Chase Oaks Church podcast. Before we dive in, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the Chase Oaks Church app. The app is the best place to catch up on messages, engage with our community, and stay in the loop with everything going on around here. Most importantly, my hope is that today's message inspires you to take your next step in your faith journey. Here we go.
Well, hey everybody, it's great to be with you. I love this series that we're in for a couple of reasons. One, I love movies. I like every good action flick that you can get out there. But the other reason why I like this series is I really love popcorn. Like, I really, really do. And so before I get into the message, this is just extra for you. I just saw some genius that I have to pass on to you. It's free of charge. You can take it home. Maybe your favorite part of the message. I don't know. But I was at the movie theater the other day, and a couple of teenagers were getting popcorn, and I saw them, after they got the popcorn, pull out a straw, and they stuck it into the popcorn bag itself. And I started to weep for the next generation. Because I was like, hey, bro, like that's not, that great idea, that needs to go someplace else. That's not really how it works. But then I suddenly got inspired, because what they did with it is they went up to where the butter dispenser is, and they started dripping it through the straw and then pulling it out slowly so that it would, dissipate evenly throughout the popcorn bag. And suddenly I was like, our best days really are ahead. That is amazing. I'm sorry I doubted you guys. I have so much to learn. That's next level popcorning. Great stuff. Your doctor is going to totally thank me for giving you that tip, so you can take that with you. But I am excited today because today we're in week 2 of At the Movies, and today's movie is what I'll call a hidden gem. And what I mean by that is it came out a little while ago in the theaters and did great, but it also has had a bit of a streaming resurgence lately. And it's the story of a British teenager, who goes from racing cars in a video game to actually racing them in real life professionally on a professional circuit. And what's great about this movie, it has a little bit of something for everyone. Like, if you like fast cars, we got them for you today. We're going to blow out our speakers at all of our campuses. You're in for a great ride. If you love video games, we got them in here too. And I already know, some of you who really like video games, you're like, an inspiring story about video games. You're poking your spouse or your partner or your parent. You're like, hey, are you paying attention? See, all these hours really make a difference. And let me tell you, that spouse or parent or somebody is paying attention, and they're rolling their eyes at me right now. Because they're like, hey, I just got them off of video games here. Eric, they may even be on video games right now. But either way, we are going to be inspired by, we'll talk a little bit about the video game thing, but it's got video games if you like that. It's got romance. It has an underdog story, somebody that goes from a small upbringing to achieving great things in a really inspiring way. There's heartbreak and victory and all of that different stuff. And it's all based on an incredible true story, which I love movies that are based on true stories, and this one is. But the thing that I think this movie does a great job of telling, and the thing we're going to focus on today, is it does a great job of showing us what it takes to get momentum in life. In our world today, I don't think any of us are short on having high hopes or big dreams for ourselves, for our family, for the people that we love that are in our life. And yet, life has a way of kind of wearing us down over time, or bringing into our path different barriers and obstacles and things that get in the way that just over time, the wheels of our life starts to feel kind of stuck. And in fact, it may even feel that way to you right now. It's kind of like my lawnmower. My lawnmower is over 10 years old, and it shows. And so this past season, when spring came around, I go to pull it out of the garage, and one of the front wheels had completely rusted over the wintertime. And so to be able to get it moving again took a lot of work. It also took a lot of this, WD-40. In fact, right next to the WD-40 is another thing that tends to get things moving. This is lighter fluid. So right now, we're not going to do a candlelight service today. Both are highly flammable. Both also actually remind me of my dad, too. Happy Father's Day, Dad. My dad would look at both of these tools, and he'd say, these can solve a lot of problems in your life. I don't know what the issue is around the house, but he's like, spray a little WD-40 on it. That'll do the trick. Or if you're ever lost in the woods, because who isn't lost in the woods from time to time, he would say having that lighter fluid, man, that's a good tool to have for you. And so if you're an unlit campfire, or if you're a stuck lawnmower wheel, these things are great. But the question I want us to wrestle with today is what happens when we're the ones who are stuck? Where you're the one who has rusted over time, or have run into something that's challenging, or just feel like your fire has kind of gone out. What does it look like to get WD-40 in your life? Or say there's somebody that you have in your world, in your family, or at your workplace, or somebody that you care deeply about who you can sense has just lost momentum in their life. What does it look like to enter into that space and to actually be lighter fluid for them? Gran Turismo does a great job of illustrating this. There's several characters that go from being stuck to unstuck. We're going to focus on one in particular. But as we look to the movie, we're also going to look at somebody that I will call a momentum expert. It's the Apostle Paul from the New Testament. He was just somebody who was gifted at getting things moving. Like God used him in a big way to actually get the whole movement of God moving when it had gotten stuck. You know, right before Jesus ascends into heaven in the book of Acts, he leaves final instructions to the church. He says, you guys need to go out into the world and change it and bring my message of hope and love and grace to everybody. And what happens after Jesus goes up into heaven? Nothing. They just stick around and stay put until Paul comes in and gets things moving again. And God uses him in a big way through his missionary journeys in an incredible way. But not only did Paul get the movement going overall, he was great at doing this with people. Perhaps no better example than a young leader in his life named Timothy, who had lots of factors and forces in his life that would maybe keep him from moving forward. And yet Paul was an expert at entering into his world and getting him moving and keeping him moving when there was so much that was working against him. And so he'll have some different phrases. Some of my favorite phrases that are in the entire Bible we'll go over today. And these are phrases that were like WD-40 for Timothy at different points of his life. And so if you are feeling stuck in some way, in some capacity, my prayer for you is that these would do the same thing in your world as well. But with that, we can also be inspired to say, how can we be Paul to the people that are in our life? How can we enter in as the WD-40 for them? And with that, there's a catch. And the catch is this, that while you and I have the opportunity to be an accelerant in people's lives, we also, unfortunately, often unintentionally, have the ability to be the rust in someone's life too. And we don't want to do that. And so today's going to be really helpful as we examine how to be an accelerant, a momentum getter in people's lives. And so let's turn our attention to the movie, and we're going to look at the main character. His name is Jan Mardenborough. He is a British teenager who, from the earliest that he could remember, was passionate about racing cars. But racing cars and having a passion for that is a challenge, because it's not something that you can just go into your backyard and start racing a car. It's really tricky to know how to do that. And so the best way that he knows how to express that passion is through playing a video game. He would call it a racing car simulator because it's that accurate, called Gran Turismo. Many of you probably have played it. Over 80 million people have played this video game. And that's how he would live out this passion. But with that, his passion isn't video games. His passion is race cars. And while that's his passion, he's currently stuck. He's working a dead-end job at a department store selling clothes. And he's in a family that just doesn't seem to understand him. And so let's watch this dinner conversation. We've probably all experienced some kind of family dinner conversation, or maybe just a conversation like that, and we probably experienced it from both sides of the table. Like sometimes we maybe identify with Jan, where we have this passion and a little bit of uncertainty, and as we're wrestling with it and kind of stuck in our plans, that we look around the table and it seems like somebody else has momentum. Like in the case of himself, it's his brother who has a passion for soccer. It's a British movie, so football, because his dad also played soccer, football, and so somebody else has momentum, but we're feeling kind of like we've hit a brick wall and that nobody seems to understand. We've probably also experienced this maybe from the side of being Jan's dad, or at least Jan's parents, where there's somebody in our life that we want desperately to help them grow and to take steps in their life, and yet there's a disconnect as we're trying to step in and be helpful. In the case of them, I think the disconnect popped up because Jan's dad, it was hard for him to separate out what Jan was going through from his own experience. And what he was doing was actually projecting his path upon his son. He had every good intention about it, but he was saying, based on his experience, based on his strength and his passion, this is what he thought his son should do. And as a result, everyone is leaving frustrated. And it's at this point I want us to turn our attention first now to Paul and how he had these types of conversations to help Timothy move forward in his life. And this is what he says in 2 Timothy chapter 1, starting in verse 2. It says, this is Paul speaking, he says, "To Timothy, my dear son." It shows that there's a close relationship that's going on here. I mean, some of us can relate to this too, that even on Father's Day weekend, maybe there's somebody that's a dad in your life that isn't biologically your dad, and Paul wasn't biologically Timothy's dad, but the relationship was that close, that meaningful, that he calls him my dear son, and maybe you have somebody like that, or maybe you are like that to somebody in your life. And this is what he continues on. He says, "I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. And for this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands." The genius of Paul was that he could look at somebody in his life and he could see what God was uniquely up to in that person's life. It's almost like he could go up to people and he could say, "Hey, guess what? I see this fire that is in you. And guess what? That fire, that isn't from you. That's actually from God." And what Paul saw his role to be when he entered into Timothy's life, and I think as he went to all these different churches in the book of Acts, was that his role was to identify, to see what was God uniquely up to in that moment and in that person's life, and then to draw it out, to identify it, to affirm it, and to move it forward like crazy. That's even what's happening here when they say the laying on of hands. Back then and even still today, that was a way to publicly affirm somebody. And so what they would do back in these churches is a group of leaders, they would call them elders of the church, would come around somebody and they would put their hands on that person and they would say what they see in that person as a way to publicly affirm, like, this is what God is doing in you. And not only do we want to affirm you in this, we want everybody who is here in this moment to see it and to affirm it too and to push it forward. In fact, our church still does this. I mean, back when I became a pastor here on staff, this was 14 years ago. Some of you have grown up with me for 14 years. I didn't have a beard back then. I was skinnier, if that was easy to imagine. I know it's crazy. And at that point, when I joined staff, the elders came and they laid hands on me and on Amy, on my wife. And it was a powerful moment of affirmation that I'll still remember because for Paul, what he wanted to do was he wanted to draw out new leaders and say, God is working uniquely in you. And so for you and I, if we want to be somebody that inspires motivation or inspires momentum in someone's life, we need to do probably two things simultaneously. We need to resist the urge to project our path and our preferences and our strengths upon somebody else. And instead, we need to see our role as being the chief fire inspector in their life, where we're insanely curious, like we're just looking with intensity in their life to see where is there a flame, even if it's just an ember or a flicker or a hot spot, and how can I identify that and pour fuel all over that fire so that they're affirmed and that they move forward with it. And as we have that role in our life, as we think about how we can be an accelerant to somebody, there's a hard lesson that I've learned in my experience. That it's difficult for you and I to enter into somebody's life and to actually be the thing that sparks the fire in them. Like, for example, do you know what happens if you were to spray lighter fluid on dirt? Nothing. And I know that's frustrating Because I know there's probably somebody in your life who you desperately want there to be a fire. Maybe it's not even your fire, it's just a fire for something, a fire for anything, a passion in their life. And yet in that moment, what I've learned is it is really hard, and actually we're not very good at it when we try to go in there and be the spark, the one that's forcing our fire on somebody else. We do have a role to play. Like we do have stuff that we can do, like we can be present, we can help set the conditions for someone to make sure that there are conditions that a fire might start up. We can be present and listen and draw things out. We can pray that God would enter into their life. But, and look at me here, because this is so important. I've made this mistake before. It is not your role or your responsibility to light the fire in somebody else. And let me flip that around, because it works both ways. That if you're here and you're waiting on somebody to come into your life and spark the fire for you, you're going to be sitting around a long time. That is something that is on us to look to God and say, God, would you light a fire in me? And would I be the one that's passionately looking for what that is and trying to set aflame what you have going in my life? And I have such good news for all of us today, that if we're here wondering, is God really gonna light a fire in my life? That he wants to do that in every single person here and in every single person in the room. That he created everyone uniquely. In Genesis, it talks about how God has actually put his image on every single person. What that means is God is creative. He's put creativity on you. That God is somebody that brings order to chaos. He's put that ability in you. And for those of us who are Christ followers, even better than that, he's given us his Spirit. His Spirit as a way to gift you and gift me to move forward his movement. And so my job is to seek that out, say, God, would you help me discover that? And would you light that fire? Because I want to pour fuel on that. And so Jan has this passion in his life. He's got this hot spot, and he's not quite sure what to do with it until all of a sudden an opportunity comes his way that is surprising, kind of crazy. That he finds out he is so good at Gran Turismo that he qualifies for a regional video game race of the best Gran Turismo players. And that if he wins this regional race, he actually gets to go to something called the GT Academy. It's a place where they will train these guys to take their video game skills and see how it translates to becoming a real race car driver. And so for him to get that opportunity, he needs to win this race. Let's see what happens by watching this next clip. Now, before we get too hard, happy Father's Day, by the way. Before we get too hard on Jan's dad here, let's give it a moment of levity. That if you were his dad, you would have questions too. Because it's kind of a crazy idea, right? That you got this video game contest and all of a sudden we're just gonna throw you on a track. Like, I would have questions too. But what happens here, and I think this is a challenge and even a danger that all of us face, is that what Jan's dad does here is something we are all in danger of doing. Because when Jan comes with this bold idea, this kind of crazy idea, what his dad failed to realize is this: what was at stake in this moment. That a flame that had been lit was in danger of being snuffed out, and it was only a breath away. And that you and I are in danger of doing the same thing. That if somebody comes into our life with a great idea or a bold idea or something that we even think is a little crazy or unconventional, there's a challenge that we face, because a lot of times they've probably been thinking about it for a long time in their world and wondering how to approach us with it. And for us, it's hitting us out of the blue. And yet, if we don't recognize what is at stake in that moment, we can snuff it out so quickly. Or if we say something like, that's unrealistic, it's gone. Or that'll never work. Or do you remember the last time you tried to do something big and you remember how that turned out? There is so much danger when there's something that is trying to get lit that we have to be careful to give space for whatever that dream or whatever that flame is to breathe. It reminds me of lighting a campfire. I was in the Boy Scouts back in the days. I remember when I tried to light my first fire, I would put all the different wood like so close together and kind of pack it in, because you're like, well, more wood, the better, you know, it's gonna make it light better. And what would happen is there was no oxygen that could get in to light the flame, and it would snuff out. And the point is that if we come in with a lot of questions, a lot of structure, almost too much at the beginning, we can snuff out what God is doing in someone's life. I like how Andy Stanley, he's a pastor and an author, how he words it, where he says that there's a tendency among organizations, among leaders, even among parents and friends to quell good ideas too early. And that what we have to learn how to do, it's a discipline, is to replace saying how when someone gives us an idea and replace it with wow. In fact, can we say that out loud together? Wow. That when somebody comes into our life to actually give space for the dream to get some oxygen in its life, to see what God might be doing. I want us to look at how Paul does that with Timothy. He does it in a subtle way, but right after he says, fan into flame the gift that God has given you, he says in verse 7, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. What Paul is saying is that we serve a wow God. And yes, self-discipline will come, and we'll get into that in a moment. But in the moment, some of us need to recognize that we have the Spirit of God working in us, and He wants to do big things, and it should make us bold. And my encouragement to a few of us here is that some of us have been squashing out good ideas in our life or good dreams in our life because maybe we've entered in where we have a flicker of an idea that pops into our brain, but then all of a sudden we start piling on the how. Like, I don't know, that'll never work, instead of giving it space to happen. Or for the people in our lives. And as a parent, I struggle with this more than anybody. That when a younger person comes in, oftentimes their idea that they have is unconventional. Jan's idea was very unconventional, and it would be easy for me to dismiss the things that I don't understand. And what you and I have to do is to have the discipline to say, I'm going to give space to see what God might be up to in this moment. So Jan does take a bold step in spite of the resistance that he kind of faces in this moment. He does go to the GT Academy, and what he discovers there is that racing cars on a video game is a lot different than racing cars in real life. That it will actually take a lot of hard work, and he's gonna meet a mentor who's gonna train them. They're gonna push him really hard because safety is at stake, and they wanna see if these kids can actually do it. So in this next clip, let's watch what happens. So if Jan wants to achieve his dream, it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take pressing himself and moving into it and developing that skill. And that's important for you and I, again, as we think about momentum in our world. It would be easy for us to think that if I'm operating in my space of gifting, that it'll feel freeing and easy and no issues that will pop up in my world. But that is not the case at all. That what God calls us to do when we actually have a passion is we have to step into discomfort and develop it. This is what Paul will say to Timothy. He says in 1 Timothy 4:14 and 15, he says, do not neglect your gift, which was given to you through prophecy when the body of elders laid their hands on you. Be diligent in these matters. Give yourself wholly to them so that everyone may see your progress. And what Paul is basically saying is that, yes, God gave you a gift, but it is your job to give that gift your best. And that applies to all of us too. I mean, when Paul talks about gifting just overall, he talks about lots of gifts, and this includes you and me. And this is what he says in Romans chapter 12. He says, we each have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then encouragement. You get a pattern there. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it. There's our word, diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. He's saying, use your gift. And by using your gift, don't just use it, develop it. Give yourself wholeheartedly to wherever the part is that God, whatever the flame is that God has given you in your life. And as this passage from Romans makes clear, like, we have lots of different gifts. Gifts come in all shapes and sizes. And I don't think that list is actually comprehensive. He lists a lot there, but there's more that I think are out there. In fact, this raises the question about like technology and gaming, because I know some of you are asking this question, like, hey, can I be gifted in something like video games? So let's talk about that for a second. Because I have some friends of mine, some of them that are here, they're watching from a few of our campuses who I would say are very gifted when it comes to technology, even gaming, that they have figured out a way to use these different things or create these different tools to make a difference, to help people connect or to actually help there be a lot of good that's done. Like some of my friends that do amazing things with technology, they help organizations and businesses do things that they could never achieve without the technology. And so if you're asking me, could I be gifted in video games? I say, well, there might be an opportunity for you to say yes to that. But there's a catch. And that catch is that every time we have a gift in our life, God always uses it not to be internally focused, but externally focused. That it'll push us out to make a difference in the world. And so if the only way you are expressing a gift is through entertainment or comfort or sitting around, that's not being diligent with the gift, that's being stuck. And so it's our job to develop what God has given us and to use it. And while they come in all shapes and sizes, being faithful is that we're going to be stretched and grow and use it and figure out how to make a difference in this world. It means moving into discomfort. And that's where it leads Jan. Jan will win the GT Academy. He wins the right to be able to race with the different big boys, the professional racers. And so he's really going to step into discomfort in this next moment, because for the first time, he's going to be on a real racetrack with real drivers who are professional. None of them respect him. All of them look down on the path that got him to this moment. And there are so many things, and we're going to watch an extended clip here. And I want you to pay attention, because as you watch this clip, to think of how many different forces and factors could have snuffed out his flame. And as you think of those forces and factors, I want you to pay attention to how his mentor, Jack, enters in and helps him through it. Let's watch. Where is it normal for cars to explode? Race car driving, that's where it's normal. And I love how he enters in. It's like Jack is in his ear the entire time, giving his experience and sharing what he knows and helping him to get through the hard times. And that's what Paul did, and it's what we have the opportunity to do too. This is what Paul says in 2 Timothy 3:10 as he's talking, again, to Timothy, this young leader. He says, "You, however, know all about my teaching, my way of life, my purpose, my faith, patience, love, endurance, persecution, suffering." Basically, I have shared all of my experiences with you. And let me tell you from experience, it's going to get hard. That if you're living into your gifting, it's not going to be an easy ride. And so as you live into that hardship, here's what I want you to do. He says this in 2 Timothy 4:5. He says, "Keep your head in all situations." I love that phrase. Basically, don't freak out. Endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. Basically, in another phrase for keep your head about you is be sober-minded, which means, yes, don't think too highly of yourself. Don't get an overinflated ego, but also don't think too lowly about yourself either. There's a phrase that I think resonates with a lot of us when we think about thinking too lowly of ourselves, especially as we step out to use our gifting, and it's imposter syndrome. Perhaps you've experienced this where you step into a new environment where you're like, okay, the whole place is looking at me and saying, that guy doesn't belong. Like I've thought that every time I step onto a stage like this, where it's like, do I really have what it takes? And in those moments, it is so helpful to have a team of people or a trusted guide that can come in and say, you've got what it takes. You can do this. And it's gonna get hard, but I wanna keep you moving and share my experiences with you. And in Jan's case, it does get hard. That he's about to have an intense moment. And I want to just set you up that there is an intense scene that we're about to watch because Jan does run into difficulty. Let's watch. Jan would go on to finish that lap, and he'd go on to have an amazing career. He raced over 200 professional races. He's still active. Nissan has kind of pulled back from their race car program, but he is still an active professional racer. He'd go on to podium different races. In fact, if you finish the movie, you'll see his team do an incredible race together and persevere together, and he would even go on to win a race as well. So it's an incredible story, but it all starts with being willing in a moment that could have taken him out for the count to keep the flame alive in even the darkest moments. And for some of us today, one of the best ways that we can be WD-40 or lighter fluid in someone's life is not by using our gifts or our strengths, but actually by using our experiences, by using the hardships that we've endured in our life. And as we share those different things, that can be a powerful way to actually not excuse what happened to us, but actually for God to redeem it and use it in the life of somebody else to keep them moving forward when they need it the most. I love how 1 Corinthians words it, where it talks about how God, the way that he has comforted us, we actually have the ability to then use that to be a comfort to other people. Because for all of us, if we're gonna do what God has called us to do, if we're gonna keep moving through all the hardships, the biggest part is to keep that flame alive, to persevere. I love how Paul, this is our final phrase for tonight. I love how Paul words this in 2 Timothy 4:7, where he says, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. That basically I have focused on what God wants me to do. I have persevered in that and I have been stretched, but I kept moving forward in spite of all of it. You know, as I close, there's a number of phrases that I've talked about today. Some of my favorite ones that are in there. Fight the good fight. Keep your head about you in every situation. Be diligent and be bold. But I think the best phrase that kind of summarizes all of it, the one that's our big point for today, is the one that he shared at the beginning, which is to fan into flame the gift of God. And so I have a challenge for us this week, particularly even in the next couple of days, is for you to put into your calendar a time, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour. I would even label it as WD-40 time in your life. And just saying, I'm gonna dedicate this next little bit of time to fan into flame what God has uniquely given me to do. And that can look a number of different ways depending on where you're at in your life. Part of it could be, hey, Eric, I really don't know what that is. And so maybe that 30 minutes or an hour is doing a heat check on yourself to say, okay, God, what is it that you've uniquely put on my life that I need to pay attention to? Or maybe it's inviting someone into your life to say, hey, what do you see in me? Where are there hot spots that I need to pay attention to? It could look like giving space for you to dream a little bit more, to be bolder about what God has given you to do, and to not get the oxygen out too quickly. It could be that. Or maybe it's to dream about a class or an opportunity to develop your gift. Or maybe it's to say, hey, honestly, my flame is flickering a little bit, and God, would you come in here? Would you bring in a trusted guide that would help me do what you called me to do? And so as you set aside that time for you, one more challenge, and then I'll close. And it's this. Think of somebody in your life that you can be WD-40 to. Somebody that maybe is a kid or a spouse or a coworker or somebody that you've been uniquely placed in their life, not to create the fire for them, but to say, hey, I want to point out what I see in you. And I think as we've seen throughout this movie, the power that comes with you and I, that when we do that, it makes a huge difference for everything. And so with that, would you pray with me? Father, thank you that you are a God of transformation, a God of movement, that you are a God that comes into our lives, into our world, and you never leave us as you found us. And by your grace we are saved, but also you have given us the ability to make a difference in this world. And so help us know how to do that. And Father, I pray for those that are watching or in this room right now who, if they were honest, they would say their flames are flickering just a bit. And that in that moment that you would meet them where that is with a sense of your grace, a sense of your presence, a sense of safety and space for them to see how you are uniquely gifting and wiring them to make a difference, and you would encourage them along the way. We are so grateful for you and we love you. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.